My name is Claire Kearney-Volpe, and I'm going to be presenting a paper that I co-authored with Dr. Amy Hurst entitled Accessible Web Development, Opportunities to Improve Education and Practice of Web Development with a Screen Reader. So just a bit of background. There is a growing demand for web skills in a growing number of web development and web development adjacent jobs. However, there's little formal investigation on the subject of web development education and career pathways for blind screen reader users. So we asked the question, or several questions, what are some recurring accessibility issues faced by screen reader users in both education and practice? What tools, strategies, and workarounds are used? And what opportunities exist to improve access and to improve the experience? A bit about our design and methods. We conducted a comprehensive literature review, or CLR, and analyzed formal literature related to programming and computer science accessibility. We monitored an email listserv for about a period of 6 months that was populated or used by blind programmers. We also analyzed blog posts authored by blind web developers and brought in some observations we've made from completed pilot work. Second, we conducted interviews with blind web developers, and we did 12 in total. These were in-depth interviews that were centered around web development accessibility issues, strategies in both learning and practice. Key takeaways from those: in the comprehensive literature review, that yielded 5 very general categories of accessibility issues: visual information without an accessible equivalent, orienting, navigating, lack of support, and finally, knowledge and use of supportive technologies. There are a number of specific issues, and primarily these issues were broadly applicable to programming accessibility. So really the interviews helped us to validate the general categories, but add some nuance and texture around what are the web-specific challenges in learning and practice. And what we found is that interview participants really struggled with inaccessible wireframing tools. They had no way to independently verify computed CSS outputs. They had trouble navigating browser-based developer tool interfaces. And finally, there was a lack of accessible explanation and demonstrations of CSS in design concepts. In terms of strategies and workarounds, participants told us that they focused on back-end web development, so avoided design and front-end altogether, and where possible, sought collaboration with sighted programmers and used sighted interpreters, and finally told us that the use of CSS frameworks were helpful, and also where available, accessible developer tools. In terms of opportunities, we heard about 3 main categories of opportunities. The first is machine learning and image recognition technologies, or AI, to aid in process of visual design and CSS output verification. Second is tactile interfaces, from 2D, 3D, static to dynamic, tactile interfaces to support learning and design verification, as well as to just learn to better understand spatial properties of web pages. And then finally, participants told us they wanted greater community supports and programming to establish communities of practice and learning. I have a quote from a participant here who, in recounting his education in web development, said he learned much better on his own. So he said, "I learned much better on my own than I did in any classes." Another quote from a participant talking about the practice of web development said, "I don't really know what a good website looks like, and I don't know how to produce it." The contribution here is really we set out to do this research to explore and deepen the discourse on accessibility issues, strategies used, and opportunities to support blind web developers. And really, by identifying the current state of education and practice, including issues, strategies, and opportunities for new tools, we really laid the groundwork for increased participation. Also, this work has led to the development and implementation of a newer screen reader user-focused web development curriculum. And finally, the areas that we identified for future work hopefully will ensure web development, education, and practice are more accessible going forward. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Claire Kearney-Volpe, and my co-author is Dr. Amy Hurst.